Hi David and Roxanne, Tom here from Family Marine, and we got good news. We got your pontoon all ready to go. It's all been test run and cleaned and everything is looking really good. Now normally we would have you guys come in and I would do a run through with you, show you how to operate it, show you how to break it in, where everything reads. But of course, because of this COVID-19 thing and the social distancing, we think that it's easier to just do a video for you. And of course, this way you can always refer back to this video if you ever have any questions. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to start on the outside and I'm going to walk around the boat. I'm going to explain everything about the boat, the motor. Then we're going to get on the inside and we'll show you everything in there. So with that being said, let's start up front. Of course, we've got our pop-up cleats, tie your boat off, our LED docking lights, our LED navigation lights. And as we go down the side, you'll see your port gate. Oh, this little clip right up here, I want to talk about that. There's 4 of those, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. That's where you tie your boat bumper to. Just have your rope coming down and your boat bumper hanging right here. And it's easily removable by pushing that little tab up on top, and you can pop that thing right out of there. Okay, so there's 4 of those. As we go to the back of the boat, we'll see our power Bimini. We'll see our stern stainless steel safety stanchions. Another one of those little cleats that I was talking about to tie your boat bumpers to. Okay. Our engine, ski tow bar, fender holders. Gas tank is full. Now, since we're back by the engine, let's talk about the engine a little bit. Now, because this is a brand new motor, of course, we're going to have to break it in. So the owner's manual is inside the boat. And of course, it's always a good suggestion to read the entire owner's manual before you go boating. Yeah, people do that all the time, right? So, break-in procedure. Kind of simple. 10 hours total. First hour, no more than 3,000 RPM and vary the throttle speed. Second hour, no more than 4,000 RPM and vary the throttle speed. Next 8 hours, short bursts of wide open throttle, 30 seconds, a minute, something like that, and vary the throttle speeds. That gives us a well-rounded break-in procedure. So in other words, what they're really trying to say is, well, you don't have to baby it, like tie it to a dock and let it idle for 10 hours. That's not good. But then you don't want to pound on it either. I know you guys are on Games Lake, so wide open throttle on this thing for about a minute, yeah, that's about across the whole entire lake. Anyway, so as like your other one, which happens to be right behind us here, you do have a telltale, which is a hole where the water comes streaming out when the engine is running. Okay, and I'm sure you guys know that you cannot run this motor out of water. These water intake vents on the side of the lower unit have to be in the water in order to operate this engine. Even 30 seconds of running it out of the water will ruin that water pump impeller that's inside there. So the stream of water is our telltale. Now, sometimes that telltale can get clogged with sand or seaweed or algae, but our overheating warning horn doesn't go off. Okay, so overheating warning horn kicks in at 240 degrees. And what will happen is the motor will shut down to no more than 1,000 RPM. That's called limp mode, L-I-M-P, limp mode. In other words, that's enough to get you back. So personally, if that were to happen to me, first thing I would do is tilt the motor up and clean any weeds off or any obstructions that may be preventing water from cooling the engine. I would take the hood off, and I'll show you that when we get inside, and let the engine cool down, and then drive it back to home. So like I say, the overheating warning horn will come on. It's a horn up at the dash letting you know that, yeah, hey, we hit 240 degrees. About 170 is normal on these. So yeah, we're not supposed to get to 240. Now, that horn also doubles as a low oil pressure warning horn. Okay? 40 years of doing this, I've never seen a low oil pressure situation, but theory says it could happen, so they put a horn on it. And when we get up and we look at some of the dash readouts, we can show you where the oil pressure digital display is. There's a whole bunch of information that we can get out of these gauges on this boat. Okay? So, gas. This engine is made to run with 87 octane fuel with up to 10% ethanol. If they ever go to E15, nope, you can't use it. E10 is the max you can use. I don't really like that fuel because what can happen is as the boat sits for 2, 3, 4 weeks at your dock, the alcohol can separate from the fuel and settle to the bottom of the tank, and then next thing you know, this blob of pure alcohol moves over to the fuel pickup, and you're trying to burn pure alcohol in your engine, and that don't run. Okay, so our suggestion is that you use 91 non-oxygenated fuel. Not all gas stations have that. If you go to a gas station, there's a 91 octane pump, it has to have a little white sticker there that says non-oxygenated, to be used in classic cars, snowmobiles, motorcycles, boats, ATVs, lawnmowers, chainsaws, things like that. There's no alcohol in that. Okay, so that's the fuel that we prefer. Again, 87 with 10% ethanol. You can use it, but like your car, you're constantly replenishing that fuel. If you use that much fuel during the summertime, sure, go ahead and use 87. I used to when my kids were at home because they'd go through a tank of gas in a week. But now that the kids are gone, we don't use our boat that often, so I have to run 91 non-oxygenated. Okay? Okay, on the starboard side of the pontoon, of course we have our electric horn here. Again, our pop-up cleats, LED navigation lights, LED docking lights. We move down the side. Again, our stainless steel safety stanchions, cleat. Okay, this is the transducer for the depth finder. And you'll notice that it's angled down just a little bit. The idea behind this is we want to have solid water on the bottom of the transducer. Any air bubbles are going to make our transducer go wacko. Just not going to work. We have to have solid water. And sometimes at high speeds, these things don't work very well because there's so much water, aerated water coming off the bottom of the tube that you just can't get a good reading. Again, we have to have solid water. Now this is on a kick-up bracket. Okay? So let's say you're driving along and you hit a twig. Transducer pops up out of the way on you, and now your depth finder doesn't work because you're getting air. All right? So if that happens, you got to come back here and push it down just a little bit past level. Again, just so we're angled down and we get solid water on the bottom of that transducer. So with that being said, let's take a look at the inside. Oh, before we go, I want to show you one thing. This little petcock right here, if you want to do your own oil changes, this is where you drain your oil. What we do is we stick like a half-inch hose on here, 3/4 inch hose on here, and into a bucket, and we just loosen that thing, and all the oil will come draining out. I'll show you your oil fill and your oil dipstick when we get inside. All right, starting up in the bow of the boat, of course, we have our two great big bench seats with forward-facing chase lounges. Our armrests, of course, just flip down. Storage compartment underneath the bench seats. I want to make point of this bench seat. You notice how it curves out like this. If you were to sit on the edge, this seat would flip open on you. So what they do to prevent that is they put this little black bracket on this one. It's only on this seat. So when you go to put this seat back, what you got to do is kind of lift up like that so that that black bracket goes underneath that white plastic. And that's what holds it in place and prevents it from flipping up on you if you were to sit on the edge of the seat. A couple of USB jacks up front. Subwoofer with an amplifier. You know about the pop-up table. You know about the trash can that's stored inside this storage compartment right here. There's our table. We have not installed the table yet. We're waiting for you to tell us where you'd like us to mount it. Glove box, push that little button in, twist it, and there's all of our owner's manuals and our circuit breakers. We don't have fuses, we have circuit breakers. Floor storage, pet food tray, of course. We'll get to the helm in a second. Co-pilot's chair with a couple of cup holders. Okay, back on the engine a little bit. I wanted to show you the dipstick and the oil fill. There's a little button here for this cover. You push that in and that'll open up, and there's our dipstick, and this yellow cap is our oil fill. This red button down here, in order to remove the hood, you push that red button and you lift up on this handle, and I can't do it now because the motor's tilted up, but you just lift this hood off with this handle. Works really great. Once you get the hood back on, you flip this handle down until it locks. And then you can close this lid and it'll lock in place. Okay, now since we're here, I want to show you the batteries. There are two batteries in this boat, one for the house and one for the engine. Okay, so this battery over here is our engine battery, and this battery over here is our house battery. Now our sea legs are hooked to this pump, and I'll talk about the sea legs in a minute. And this is the battery that starts the engine. So the house battery operates the sea legs, the stereo, the accessories, all that stuff that's on board the boat. And this battery only operates the engine. Now on the side over here is a battery on-off switch. So the white arrow pointing straight up is off. You turn it to the right one click, and that's just the engine battery. And you turn it to the second click, and that's both batteries. So that's the position that we want you to operate the battery on-off switch, in the position boat. So the arrow kind of points down and to the right. Okay? There's also what's called a voltage sensitive relay, a VSR. So let's say that you're over at the sandbar, you got the engine off, and you're listening to your stereo for 3-4 hours, and that stereo is operated off the house battery, and this battery wears down a little bit. Okay? We start the engine off of this battery, and then the alternator on the engine will charge just this battery, because the voltage sensitive relay senses that this battery is low and this battery is fully charged, and sends all the juice from the alternator to this battery and not overcharging this battery. So a voltage sensitive relay is very, very nice to have. And I'm going to talk about the sea legs in a little while, because there are some things we have to be cautious about when it comes to sea legs, and I'll get to that. Okay, so that's our two batteries. Okay, on the helm. So the first thing we have, of course, is our key switch down here. We have accessory, we have on, and we have start. So if we were in the water, I could start the engine right now. But you'll notice right now I can't start the engine because the neutral light is flashing. That tells me that my control handle is not in neutral. I have to be in neutral in order to start this engine. So I got to slide that back. The green light stays steady. Now I'm in neutral. Now I can just start the engine. I don't have to choke it. I don't have to advance the throttle. I don't have to do anything, because this is an electronic fuel injected engine. All I have to do is start it. All right? There's some buttons on here. For example, this one says throttle only. So let's say I wanted to rev the engine up in neutral, kind of like park or neutral in your car. I hit the throttle only button and the light comes on, and now I can sit and rev the engine up. As soon as I turn that off, boom, I'm ready to go into gear, and away I go. There's a start stop button up here, but you probably never use that because I just use the key switch. There's a dock button and a transfer. You'll never use those because transfer is for two stations if you had a fly bridge with a second helm up there. And docking, all that does is limit the RPM that the engine can go as you're pulling into a dock. You guys are experienced enough boaters, you'd probably never use that. And this is your plus and minus button that you can use to increase or decrease the light on your Simrad. You'll see how that Simrad is getting brighter and darker. Okay, I'll go through the Simrad in just a minute. Now, of course, we have our safety lanyard. Okay, our little red clip that theoretically we hook this to our belt loop in case we fall out of the boat. This will come off and the engine will die. Now you hear it beeping at us. Okay, that beep says that this is disconnected. As soon as I put that back on that little red clip and flip the lever up, the beeping goes away. Okay? Now, I'll get to the Simrad in a little bit. We'll hit accept there. I want to talk about these gauges right up here. Okay? First of all, we have our tachometer. It's an analog readout of our RPMs. Down in this LCD screen, we can toggle through different menus and see different things. So right now, this is our trim gauge, and it tells us that our trim gauge is in the trailer position at number 18. When the motor's all the way down, it'll say 0. This one over here is our water pressure. Because our engine isn't running, it says 0. We can toggle through. There's our volts at 11.9. There's our engine hours at 0. There's our RPM at 0. Our battery is okay, our temp is okay, our PSI is okay. There's our fuel, we're full, it's 100%. RPM mode, we normally don't use that. Active trim is on. And when we get to the Simrad, I'll show you more about the active trim. And right now it says the motor is trimmed too high. Yes, I know that, it's tilted up. The active trim won't engage because I got the motor tilted up too high. Again, we'll talk more about the active trim in a minute. There's our oil pressure, or excuse me, our oil temperature. There's our oil pressure. That's the end of the screen. So again, you can toggle through many things there. Same thing on the speedometer. This is a GPS-driven speedometer, and it gives us some information like air temp. Our sea temp is off. There's our fuel in gallons. 51 gallons are in there. And there's our, over on the right is our, I can't read it with the light in here. Estimated range, that's not set up. So there's a little bit of things that you can get out of the speedometer. But most of it is going to be on the Simrad. So let's go through that. First of all, our little warning horn is telling us that no GPS fix. Yeah, I know, we're in a metal building. We can't get a GPS signal in this metal building, so I'm just going to close that out. When you turn on your engine, this is the screen that you're going to see. And this kind of duplicates what's up here on the dash. We have our speedometer over on the left, we have our tachometer over on the right. And on this particular engine, 6400 is the red line, you'll see that. This is a trim gauge down here. So as we tilt the motor up and down, that little white line will slide up and down. We can zoom in on that trim gauge and make it larger just by touching it. We still have a tach. We'll have a speed over here. We'll have our fuel in gallons. Okay. We go back. I can go to volts. Tells me I have 12 volts. I can touch speed and it'll give us some information. I could touch that gauge. It gives me the same information. I can touch speed over ground. There's a digital readout of our speed. I can touch fuel. Okay. Here's another one. There's another speedometer over here. SOG, speed over ground. Here's our depth. We can touch depth, and if we were in the water, it would be reading. Right now, we're not in the water. It won't read. Below that is our oil pressure. Our alternator is right now has 12 volts. Our battery has 12 volts. Our fuel in percentage is 100%. And we have 47 gallons of fuel in here. This Simrad is set up to 47, where this gauge up here is set up to 51. I like a little reserve, so I set this one at 47. That way you get down to 0, you still got 4 gallons left in the tank. That way you can get back. Now, I talked about active trim. Right over on the left here it says vessel control. If I touch that, down at the bottom it says active trim. Trim is too high. Yes, I know that. I'm not going to do it here, but if I could lower this motor all the way down, the active trim would be active. There's a disable button down here. When you want to disable it, all you got to do is touch that button. Or if you want to disable it, all you have to do is touch either one of the up or down buttons on the control handle, and this will override the active trim. So let's say that you're manually hitting these buttons up or down and it says override on here, and you want to get it out of override mode. What you have to do is bring the motor all the way to the down position and hit the override button, and that'll shut off. Okay, as I hit the active trim down here, it says fault. Yep, operate trim manually. Trim is too high, trim down to resume. Now, if we were to trim it down, you'd see that the profile is set at number 3. Okay, you can set the profile of the trim to anywhere between 1 and 5. I found out with my boat that 5 is too high. The prop will suck air. In other words, what the profile does is 1 is not trimmed up a little bit, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, but 5 is too high. So you can change that on the fly if you want. You can press the positive or negative in order to change the profile. Again, I can't do that here, but once you get in the water and you start using it, you'll see it's pretty basic to do. We're going to go back here. We can set our cruise control, RPMs. We can increase, we can decrease. So that's like cruise control in your car. And then in order to do that, we hit enable. Okay, if we wanted to disconnect it, we hit disable. Try that again, there we go. All right. Troll control, you really don't have that on this engine. Cruise control, we already talked about that. Smart tow, you don't have that. All right. So we're back to our main gauge. Now, GPS. Those little 9 white buttons in the upper left-hand corner bring us back to our main page. So we hit that, and there's our menu. All right. Our chart is our GPS. Again, we won't be able to see anything in this metal building. If we were out on the lake, you'd see Games Lake, and that, of course, is your boat. We can do a split screen. I can do, there's our GPS, and there's our depth. I can go back, and I can do a different split screen. You don't have radar, so there's no sense in doing that one. This is a GPS along with a steering rudder indicator. Steering rudder indicator is an option on this motor, so as you turn the motor to the right, it would show a digital readout of where you're at, and that, of course, is true north, okay, our compass. Echo is just our depth finder. Side scan. I've never used a side scan. I just used the depth finder. I'm not even sure if this depth finder has side scan on it. I've never used it. Down scan, radar you don't have, navigation you don't have, blah, blah, blah. You could go to instruments, and there's a full cluster of all your instruments. To me, that's really hard to read, so I like to go to this one that says engine, Mercury, and that brings us back to there. Okay? There are some settings on there. I've got everything set up for you in here. Your systems, your engines, your monitors, etc., etc. So you really don't have to do anything in settings. All right? So this thing, it takes a little bit of practice to get used to this thing. It's very sophisticated. but it's nice to have because there's a plethora of information that are on this SIMRAD. If I wanted to power it off, I could hit that power button there. I could go to brightness. I could increase or decrease my brightness. And to power it off, I just hold this button. Standby, no. Nope, that's not right. Let's get out of there. I can just hit this button. This display cannot power off when connection to power control bus. Refer to owner's manual. You could go to standby if you wanted. When you turn the key off, that'll go off. Or when you turn your battery switch off, that'll go off. Okay. Now, on our dash, our switch panel, we have our navigation lights up, our red and green and our white. Anchor light is down. We have our courtesy lights not hooked to anything. Auxiliary is not hooked to anything. Floor lights, those are the interior lights in the boat. And there's a dimmer switch over here. You can increase or decrease the brightness of your floor lights. Auxiliary is not hooked to anything. Horn is down here. Docking lights and bilge pump. You have a forward bilge pump. I'm sorry, this one just has a stern bilge pump. Okay, now that is an automatic bilge pump, so if you were to get water in the center tube, this little red light over here will come on as the pump comes on. When the pump kicks off by itself, this little red light will come on. But if you want to know if you have water in it, you can manually turn the pump on just by flipping the switch down. Okay, one thing I want to point out is, you notice a little red light in there. When it's sunny and bright outside, you can't tell that that red light is on. It's just not bright enough. Okay? So if you had some accessories on and you walked away from the boat, the batteries would go dead. So what I always suggest to people is turn the battery on-off switch to the off position when you're done using the boat. All of this will go dead. You can't have a dead battery when you use your battery on-off switch. Okay? That's it for our switches. Tilt wheel, I'm sure you had this on your sand pan. Tilts up and down. Now, the stereo normally turns on when you turn the battery switch on. I shut it off a second ago. I tried going through the owner's manual to try to toggle it so that the stereo does not turn on when the battery switch is turned on. But there's nothing in there that tells me how to do that. So unfortunately, whenever you turn your battery switch on, if you don't want your stereo on, you have to come up here and push the power button. So right now, to turn the stereo on, we push the power button. Oh, it takes a long, oh, there it comes. Takes a second to boot up. We've got it on a local radio station right now. The next button down changes the color of the light in the stereo. You can go mess with it. Subwoofer positive, subwoofer negative. That increases the volume on your subwoofer. Goes up to 20. That's max on the subwoofer. Volume is spin this. This is your station controls. Here's a menu. You can scroll through that just by changing. Okay, get your presets, things like that. There's an owner's manual for the stereo. To shut it off, you push and hold it for about 5 seconds. Okay, now, power Bimini. Let's say that you wanted to open up your Bimini because it's a hot sunny day and the sun's beating on you and you don't want to get all dried out. In the position that the power Bimini is in right now, if you took the boot off, the rear bar of this power Bimini would come slamming down on you. Well, you don't want that. So what you have to do is lower the Bimini all the way down, then take the boot off, and then open up the Bimini like you did on your sandpan. And just like on your sandpan, you had your front support arms. Okay, if we didn't have these on a power Bimini, there'd be a sticker on there that says do not exceed 25 miles an hour. Well, what that really means is 15 miles an hour into a 10 mile an hour headwind. All right? Because what could happen, I've seen it happen, is you're going too fast and the wind catches this bimini when it's open and comes ripping off the back of the pontoon. Well, we don't want that, so that's why we supply you with these front support arms, just like what you had on your sampan. These little short arms here go down into this bracket. These are our trailering arms. Again, you had those on your sampan. Okay? So yeah, we got to be a little bit cautious about our power bimini, how we open that up. Okay, sea legs. Yeah, you guys had sea legs on your other boat. So this will be very, very similar to what you had before. There's some minor changes because, of course, this is a triple toon. You'll notice on your remote control that you have all kinds of buttons. Now, of course, the first one is our power button, and a little red light comes on. This is our boat up, so that's all 4 legs. In order to lift the boat up, this is all 4 legs to put the boat down. This is our front legs up or down, our rear legs up or down, our passenger legs up or down, and our driver legs up or down. So it's always 2 legs at a time that you can move, 2 or 4 I should say. You can move all 4 by boat up or boat down. 2 for the front, 2 for the rear, 2 for the passenger, 2 for the driver. Okay? And as you guys know, you have to think about what you want the boat to do, not what you want the legs to do. So if you want the boat to go up, which means the legs are going to go down, you hit boat up. Or if you want the boat to go down, you hit boat down. Now, I'm not sure if you guys ever had battery issues with your other boat with sea legs. Here's what we see happening quite often. Let's say you got your boat up on sea legs and you go down to use it. So you drop it down into the water, start your engine, you go idle around for a little bit, you put it back up on sea legs. And you do that the next day and the next day. Well, the sea legs are using more juice out of the battery than what the alternator on the engine is putting back into the battery at idle. Because an alternator at idle only puts in 2-3 amps, but at higher speeds, like say 2,000 RPM, this engine, I believe, is a 45 or 50 amp alternator. That's a lot of juice going back into that battery. So what can happen is, let's say that your house battery gets low because you've not ran it at high speeds and you don't have a whole lot of juice left in there, and you're sitting at the sandbar for the afternoon wearing this battery down. So you go to use your sea legs and all of a sudden you hit the button and it runs for a second or two and then stops. Okay? What has happened there is this circuit breaker right here has popped. See that little yellow arm? When that yellow arm sticks out like that, that's a circuit breaker, so it's popped. You got to come back here and push it back in. Now, the reason that that circuit breaker pops is because this battery is low and the pump is trying to draw all this juice from the battery. The battery doesn't have it to deliver, and therefore the circuit breaker pops. All right? Had this happen last year to a customer of ours. He was over at a sandbar listening to a stereo for 4 or 5 hours. Went to put the sea legs down, put the boat down, I should say, and his circuit breaker popped. And every time he'd flip that yellow thing in and hit the control for the sea legs, it would pop again because he had such a low battery. So fortunately for him, his lower unit was still in the water and he could start his engine off the engine battery and rev the engine up using the throttle only. Thus, the alternator on the engine was charging this battery, which was enough. He ran it for about 5-10 minutes and he got enough juice back into this battery in order to operate the sea legs without the circuit breaker popping. Okay? So that's very critical. Now, some people will say, well, why don't you take your sea legs and hook it to your engine battery? Whoa, no, I don't want to do that. All right? Last thing I want to do is be out in the middle of the lake and have a dead battery for the engine. No, 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 no. I want my, if I got a low battery, this is the battery I want to be low. I can always start my engine. Okay? Again, like your other boat, you have the sea legs, that light gray box down there. says rear up, rear down. You've got buttons down there that you can control your sea legs with. If you ever lose your remote or your battery in your remote goes dead, you've always got those secondary buttons down there that you can use. Well, Dave and Roxanne, again, I want to thank you guys very much for the purchase of your new pontoon. I know you guys are just going to absolutely love this thing. Again, if you have any questions at all, feel free to give myself a call. Corey can answer a lot of them. Jeremy, of course, is in our service department. He can help you out. So you guys have a great time and stay safe. We know we got this COVID-19 thing going on, so you got to be doing social distancing. Nice thing about a 25-foot Barletta is, yeah, you got plenty of room for 6 feet of separation in these boats. Okay. So I know that we're going to deliver your pontoon on Monday, and give Corey a call. We'll get things set up, what time to meet you at the launching ramp, things like that. So again, thank you very much and enjoy.
Whether you like to watch a beautiful sunset on the water,
or spend the afternoon skiing, tubing, or trying to catch the big one,
Family Marine and RV has a pontoon for you. Hi, I'm Gloria.
And I'm Tom. We carry a complete line of premier pontoons for cruising, fishing, or just relaxing.
Stop in and see them at our giant indoor showroom on North Highway 71 in Willmar.
Check out FamilyMarineBoats.com.